As we arrive here at Holy Week, we begin once again with the image of Jesus getting away from it all, going alone late at night to a deserted hilltop. But as we take these final steps towards the cross, we can see in it a stark difference between going off alone to recharge and the feeling of utter aloneness, found in the cry, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So let's take a look at three types of aloneness that Jesus experiences during the final journey of his life. First, we have the aloneness that comes from not being understood. The feeling of isolation, of not being understood, or not having someone with us as we walk through suffering, is a peculiar form of suffering, one that Job endured at the hands of his so-called friends, where they gave words and answers when Job needed empathy and understanding. I think we have all experienced this type of aloneness. It can be exasperating. It can leave us anxious and depressed and feeling hopeless. Jesus most likely felt this aloneness as he was beginning his journey that final week. He knew God's plans for him, and he's telling the disciples time and again, but they not only don't grasp what's happening, but they go as far as to question things such as who would sit in his right hand whenever he came to power. For all their years and time spent learning from Jesus, they couldn't see beyond themselves, their own experiences, their own gain. And that meant that Jesus must have felt more alone, no matter how many friends, followers, or masses of people that were there with him. The second type of aloneness that comes with suffering we've addressed in previous weeks. But there's no doubt that Jesus felt alone in his suffering. Jesus endured torture at the hands of those who were supposed to be of a common faith and culture. The disciples run off in fear, and all the while Jesus is isolated, alone, suffering. You know, there's an aloneness in suffering that we all know somehow. Even when our pain and experience are similar to the experiences of others, our suffering is uniquely ours. Others can listen, they can sit with us. But the pain of aloneness is sharp and vile. It threatens to undo us. Jesus must have felt this. Alone, in a prison in a basement, shackled, beaten, embarrassed, and then led through the streets without anyone coming alongside. And finally, we reach the cross, the aloneness of utter rejection, being left there in your aloneness, in that place where you are separated from everything. This is a kind of isolation we can barely imagine. What must it have felt like to have to say, God, my God, why have you forsaken me? When that is who you are, that which you have been connected with since the beginning. And yet there are parallels in our lives that are very real and leave us crying out and wondering where God is. Many have been betrayed, cast aside, thrown out, abused, used up, treated as if they aren't fully human, but somehow more broken or less made of the things that are in God's image. I can hear them scream, my God, why have you forsaken me?" this type of aloneness is one that we do not wish to know ourselves. And we must reach out and lift up those who are screaming and tell them that we have not forsaken them. As we come to the conclusion of this series, we end with Jesus in this last week, a week full of aloneness. And Jesus knows aloneness. God knows loneliness. Jesus experiences that deep pain of broken relationships, of intentional abandonment, of unintentional abandonment, and even being ignored by God and feeling completely, utterly alone. That Jesus overcomes all of this, as well as the grave, is truly good news. For we may find ourselves alone in many ways throughout our lives. But we aren't fully alone, but rather fully known by a God who has been there. And may we, as people of God, make sure that no one feels fully alone while they are here. Amen.